something that's really great about Zoom is that if you have a really good ring light and a good camera, it can really hide how exhausted you might be and maybe how much you've aged. I know that is true for myself, especially in the past year and a half of the whole book writing process. It has been so much work, and praise God for Zoom and these amazing cameras and ring lights to cover that up, not having to use a filter essentially. It's just kind of built in. But the reason I bring that up is because I was thinking about this one client and such a famous story in my own head, because it just represents a recurring theme that I've seen over the last 11 plus years that I've been doing this, helping entrepreneurs eradicate spiritual bankruptcy. So she shows up for a session on Zoom, and even through Zoom, I could see that the life force energy was drained from her face, and she was dark under the eyes. And even her mannerisms, she was just kind of like resting her head on her hands, and she could barely be present and keep her eyes open for the session. And she's in the middle of like working a really great corporate job, and also growing a portfolio of real estate, and essentially just working like 16-hour days, day in and day out for many, many years. Lots of hard work that was starting to pay off and create some beautiful results. But just like many of the clients I work with, they show up and they're overrun and they're overworked and they're exhausted, and like get to this place of like, what am I doing this for? Like, is this really worth it? And I remember in this one instance, what I asked was, okay, so can you remind me again, like, why did you become an entrepreneur? Why did you start investing in real estate? And she says, for freedom. And then I asked, so how has that worked out for you? And then she looked up at me, dead in the eyes, or through Zoom, and she says, Oliver, this is the least free I've ever been. And this is such a common occurrence for business owners and entrepreneurs, people who are driven by purpose and have this dream of using their gifts and making an impact and creating this amazing lifestyle for themselves. But then at the end of the day, like we can get so wrapped up in all of the work and the pace and and kind of taking so much of that on that we forget, like, why are we doing all of this for? And the truth about freedom is, the truth about life is really you get good at what you practice. So your daily behaviors, what your daily practices are, that is what you are kind of setting in motion. That's what you're gaining momentum in. That's what you are building muscle memory in, so to speak. And so if you are day in and day out enslaved by your business and feeling the least free you've ever been, and just feel like the boss is your business, and you're not in control of your life, project that a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead, and you'll just get more of that. And so it's challenging because like we can develop this mindset and we can create results from this do type of life, but we forget that there's also finding the freedom that's already around us and within us at this moment. How many times have I seen people and clients that I've worked with in situations where the financial freedom is actually just a few choices away, or it's even right there, and yet they won't claim it for themselves. They won't give it to themselves. And that's because at a deep level, that scarcity mindset, that feeling like there's so much lack and there's a fear of going broke and not doing enough and not having enough, that is actually so ingrained in us out of habit, out of behavior, like I was saying earlier. And so I think it's important that when we're having this conversation around freedom, that we distinguish between there's freedom from and there's freedom to. There's really two different domains when it comes to freedom. Freedom from the circumstances that we would not prefer, freedom from all the demands on us to give up our time in exchange for money, freedom from a lot of these different types of unwanted types of pressures. Like let's be real, life requires you to do hard things and solve problems and to grow and face these challenges. But when it's unwanted or not aligned and not in the direction of where you want to go, you definitely want freedom from all of that. Freedom from the job that you hate, freedom from these things. And on the other side is the freedom to, right? So this is more like moving towards, right? Like the freedom to new choices for how we live our life, how we spend our time, new choices in terms of what environments that we want to put ourselves in, what freedom to make the changes that we want to make when it comes to our career, our family, our relationships, our life path in general. So I think it's important to really, understand that there isn't just one fixed way of looking at freedom, that there's actually two different domains that we kind of live and exist from. And I think also one of the pieces here important to the conversation is just this notion. I invite you to, if one of your core values is freedom, like it is for me and a lot of the people that I work with, I invite you to consider the possibility that there is a freedom that's available to you that you have to take, that it's up to you to claim it and give it to yourself here and now. And I'll explain a little bit what I mean. There's an exercise that I do with my clients, and it is about envisioning the future, right? Like creating this remarkable day in the future and being very clear and very vivid about what that future looks like. Not from trying to overthink it and trying to overcomplicate it and be super vivid and detailed, but like when you're a child, right? Like when you're a child and life is all about wonder and awe and playing with possibility, you just look in the future and you see what you see. Like you just, you look into the future and there's just what you see there. And after helping reconnect to that part of ourselves, it's so important to, in my opinion, to have that, to get to that perspective when you look into the future. What do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear? As opposed to wanting to change where you're at right now and a slight improvement compared to what you have right now, because that's just more of what you already have. That's just more of this present moment, rather than really tapping into what is possible for you. And what's so interesting is, clients will come back and they'll have these beautiful visions, beautiful ideas and feelings and sensations and these special moments that they can see when they look into the future for themselves. And they have so much, they start to reconnect and get to that place of just being willing to dream again. I think that's really what happens when our life gets so constricted and so small with the day-to-day of business and work and action and constantly going and never taking a step back, never taking that 30,000 foot view. It can feel so small and so heavy and so burdensome. But when you get back to that place of playing and dreaming, it's, clients will come back and they're like, there's a little bit more spark in their eyes. There's a little bit more life back in their face. And I asked them, I'm like, okay, so based on, the vision that you see for yourself in the future, how much of it is available to you right now? Like you can just choose it and create it and experience it right now. Like there's actually nothing blocking you, nothing in the way. And the majority of the time they'll look at it and they'll think for a second, and then they say, Oliver, I think it's like 70 to 80%, right? I want more time for myself, time in nature, time with my family, doing more creative work, getting back to my creativity, playing music, going to live music, nourishing myself, nourishing my mind and my body, finding my hobbies, doing the things that I enjoy. Like there's so many things that actually there's nothing in the way of you being able to have even a tiny little glimpse, tiny little piece of that. And then maybe 20 to 30% is like, the business needs to be at a certain point, the career needs to be at a certain point, the kids need to have gotten, to a certain age for, for me and my spouse to be able to experience and create these things. So like that's like 20 to 30% is timeline dependent. So what does that tell you? What does that tell us? It tells us that when we are playing with possibility and we're dreaming about the future, a major chunk of that is actually available to us to create, to experience, to embody here and now. And the other chunk is dependent on a timeline, is dependent on other circumstances moving forward and changing. And yet we spend so much of our stress and worry and concern on some of those things that are hinging on outside of events, outside circumstances, outside people, when in reality we have the opportunity to actually create this, to live from the future here and now, come from that future here and now, because what you practice is what you get good at. So if you start practicing that, and giving yourself that freedom to live the lifestyle that you already see for yourself in the future, and you can give more of that right now, what a beautiful thing to give to yourself. And so here's what I recommend that you consider doing. The first thing is begin with freedom. Begin the day with freedom. I call this owning the morning. So even if it's 20 minutes or 45 minutes in the morning, give yourself, right? Invest in yourself, your main asset, and give yourself that freedom. So what would actually uplift you and bring you peace and bring you a sense of prosperity and freedom in the moment, right? Of the first thing in the morning, rather than, waiting for the perfect time for some of these practices, right? So if you want time in nature, if you want meditation, if you want prayer, if you want, journaling, if you want reading, whatever those things are, I would start incorporating that into first thing in the morning. The second thing is it's a little bit deeper. I would, recommend that you look at your circumstances and you look at all the things that you want freedom from, and, remind yourself that a lot of these, if not all of it, is your choice. There's actually nothing you have to do. The business you chose, the job you chose, where you live, all these things, these are all a consequence of your choices. And when you reclaim the power of like, oh, I'm choosing this, like, and it's just it's a choice to decide to come from the fact that these are all your this is all your choice. And all that really does is it reminds you, wow, I have the power to change it, right? I am not a victim of my circumstances. I can change my career path, my life path, my relationship circle. I can change these things. It's truly up to me. And I think the last thing I would say is, this is more on a bigger level, but include freedom and in your lifestyle. Like what does that mean? So a lot of clients that I work with, including myself, think that a 5-day work week and a 9 to 5 is just made up, right? That's what we decide. Like, is that true? Is that not true? Like, I'm not here to debate that, but it's invented, right? It's just made up. Well, what do you want to make up? Like, what do you want to make up? A 3-day work week? A 4-day work week? A 20-hour work week? A 12-hour work week? Right? So like, it's almost like when we create constraints like that, it actually is an opening for freedom. It's kind of counterintuitive in that sense. The other thing is, on this side of like building it into your lifestyle, is consider sabbaticals, right? Like, I've seen like people who are very successful, high performing, highly paid individuals take, 6-week, 6-month sabbaticals, right? To focus on themselves, on their fitness goals, on their family goals, on making sure they're in the direction that they want. And yeah, there's this fear, there's a scarcity mentality of like losing out on momentum, losing out on X, Y, and Z. But ultimately, it's like, if you read the book, Die with Zero, beautiful book, but it's ultimately like, there's so many examples of like, you don't know how much time you have on this planet, and you don't realize how much more valuable those little retirements and those little sabbaticals sprinkled throughout your lifetime are so much more enriching and enlivening, than waiting all the way till the end. Like, there's only so many things that you can experience when you're in your 60s and 70s compared to the wide range of experiences of when you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, things that you could learn, things that you can do, things that you could absorb, and places that you could explore. So, creating that lifestyle for yourself. So those are some of my thoughts right now, around freedom. If you get value from videos like this, please let me know in the comments. Feel free to share this with those that you care about. If you want to learn a little bit more about these principles that I teach, I wrote a powerful book called The Daily Prosperity Method, and you can get it using the link below. And hope to be in touch with you soon. Have a powerful day.